All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're gonna do a nice video here. Sorry, I'm getting myself tucked in here so we can have a nice conversation. I asked Mr. How do you pronounce the last name? Is it
Ceslewski.
Ceslewski? This is Henry Ceslewski. He's been a resident of Desert Hot Springs for 6 years, and he's lived in Southern California for 10 years. And I've noticed that, you know, for a long time that Henry here, he's very aware of a lot of things about the world that most people aren't aware of. And I think he's a very interesting person because he's fearless about what he posts and what he talks about online. And he doesn't care what people say. He doesn't about him. He just forges forward with his messages, because I truly believe that he'd like to make a difference. And before we started this interview today, he was telling me about some of his past interactions with politicians and his attempts to. He actually ran for a seat in the past, and he came close, got second place. So I think I just find him an interesting person. I like interesting people. I like genuine and interesting people who don't come across as you know, fake or putting on a front, because plenty of those. But I've met him a couple times in town. I came across him at the bus stop. I knew who he was, and I met him on election day. I saw him at the parking lot when he was going to vote, and just briefly here and there. But we've been friends on Facebook. But friends on Facebook today is really like we have like interests. It's not really, you know, we don't hang out. That's not what Facebook friends is about, really. But it's about connecting with people that you have a lot in common with. And I'm not afraid to connect with people who I don't have anything in common with, people who I see things opposite-wise, because I like to study those people, and I like to show them that just because I disagree with you on some things, I'm not afraid to be around you, you know, because that's important too. There's too much separating of people. But anyway, Henry here, he graciously agreed to come and do a video, and we're gonna post it on the website, and just for people to kind of watch and just get what they take away from it. He doesn't have any real extreme views, just normal guy who cares about people doing the right thing. I think he's got a problem with immorality when it comes to, you know, running cities and wasteful money and people taking bribes, and he's got a lot of history in his mind about that kind of stuff. Now, you were born in Cleveland, Ohio,
Yeah.
right? And you're that's why we've got a picture of Cleveland here, the Hope Bridge, which used to be called the what bridge?
Lorraine Carnegie.
The Lorraine Carnegie Bridge, but now it's because Bob Hope put a lot of money into the city, or donated.
Bob Hope lived in Cleveland for a while.
Oh, okay.
And was a partial owner of the Cleveland Indians, and actually prevented Dick Jacobs from moving it out of town when Dick Jacobs was the owner.
Moving the team out of town.
Yeah.
So you got a real soft spot in your heart for Cleveland, and you were telling me that Cleveland is kind of gone a direction that you're not too happy with because it's.
No, I'm aware of at least 9 refugee resettlement agencies just on Detroit Avenue alone. I lived in Detroit for about 10 years at 80th and Detroit. It was a bad neighborhood then. I get crime reports from Cleveland. I still get emails from
You follow closely.
news stations, and I would honestly say the crime has tripled since they started resettling all these so-called refugees.
Okay, we're going to continue that, but let me just back up for 1 second. And because I like to think like the person that's uninformed, or like the kind of person that is trained to react to it's a dog whistle. When somebody says a certain thing, they're trained to react in a certain way. When you said resettled refugees, boom, people say, oh, he's a racist. And some people do. So I want to back up just for a second, and I want to see if you can explain to me. I know you can. Explain to me what that means. You're being upset about all the refugees that are coming in. What are the true reasons why you have a problem with it? Because I think it's important to develop that idea, also part of what you're saying.
Both warring factions that were in Rwanda, where there were millions of people killed between the Tutsis and Hutus, both factions have been relocated in Cleveland. That is insanity.
It's warring tribes have been put right in the same city with each other.
There's no way that you would relocate Crips and Bloods blocks from each other.
So you have an informed opinion on why you think it's bad, because you know the deep details of who the people are that were resettled.
Right.
Meaning you're not just saying it's the skin color. You know it, deep issues about these people, and you know the history of their war together. So that's
well,
why.
if anyone knew
Yeah.
me, skin color has nothing to do
Right,
with it.
right.
I've had many black lovers.
Of course. I don't even think
I
you have
really
to say
have.
that. I think you
But
did a
I
great
have.
job saying
I
saying
have.
that the warring tribes is why. You think it's bad for the city, and anybody would agree. We're trusting that you've done that research in the history, because I doubt anybody will really dig into that. But it's a good point. I'm glad you pointed that out, that it's because of they fight. You know, I mean, so anyway, I'm sorry.
Well,
So
not so much fighting, but murder,
Yeah.
slaughtering each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
There were millions killed in Rwanda.
yeah, yeah,
Millions.
yeah, yeah.
And it just it doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
I
And
think it's immoral.
Cleveland is experiencing
I really do,
problems because of that.
To put that much added pressure on the police
Mm.
and the court system.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
It's too much.
I want to ask you then, because I have a theory about why, and I've said this in public places a few times. You know the strategy of creating tension, right? How it's been a CIA tactic, it's been an FBI tactic. You create tension between either gangs, and you can have an outcome out of creating that tension that is beneficial to a third party, right? So if let's just hypothesize and say that tension in Cleveland was created on purpose, was to create that tension between those two people. Do you think it's possible that higher powers do that to a city to control it more, because they've now placed two gangs together? We see it all over the world. We see it all over the United States. We see the same trick being pulled, if it's a trick. I don't think it's just coincidence. I think it's on purpose. But what do you think?
I think there's power and money to be gained in the process.
Of putting the two tribes, for
Right,
example,
because
overloading the police department.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the outcome is a benefit for the system, and it's at the detriment of the people because they do that.
If nothing else, casket sales
Right.
increased.
We laugh, but it's gallows humor. So excellent. So that's a good start of how you think and how your mind works, and you're not just drooling with medication and just
I
typing goofy
remember
things.
The Cleveland Council candidate,
Mm-hmm.
that when I was going door to door campaigning against him, I was informing people that he was very pro-abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told repeatedly, probably every third door, well, what does that have to do with the city council? He's now a county supervisor. If he had been stopped from ever getting elected, he would not be appropriating money to Planned Parenthood today as the county supervisor.
Well.
You have to be able to not only know what somebody's doing and what their beliefs are, but what they could potentially do in the future.
Mm-hmm.
He should have never been elected.
No.
He went on to be a state assembly member. He was a state senator, appropriating money, voting in favor of money to kill babies, prenatal babies. And now he's doing the same thing as a county supervisor.
And you knew, or you saw quickly, once they can get into a position, they'll climb the ladder. And that's why he's in county supervisor.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you tried to nip it early.
That's why I thought it was important to inform people that.
Yeah.
People didn't care.
Well, later on in this conversation, I want to get to one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on, because I wanted you to talk about what you're doing and the details about how you're fighting with your landlord and the neighbor and how it's a mess. We see that a lot, as friends on Facebook. You post it. I can't comment on all of them, but I do see them all. The ones that come across, that the landlord allows your neighbor to have the mess, and I want to get into that. But I want to spread us out a little further into who you are and what you're about, so we can get to that at the end. I want that to be the last thing to talk about, which is your issue with the city, because you've called on the city, and I don't want to talk about that yet. I want to get into that later. But you grew up in Cleveland, and then what brought you out 10 years ago to California?
Honestly, I panicked. In the early 80s, actually from the early 80s until probably the mid-90s, I witnessed a lot of death.
Really? Wow.
It still affects me.
was back east? Wow.
But by 1989, I know I lost 50 friends, at least 50 friends from AIDS.
Wow.
They just come dying.
Yeah.
And I didn't see my government doing a lot to prevent it. I have other thoughts. Now, I don't really think it's the government. I think there's just an attitude that people can now take a pill and prevent HIV and not have to use condoms. Well, you can still get 20-some other STDs, some of which are fatal.
Mm-hmm.
HPV, depending where you can get it, can cause throat cancer, cervical cancer, rectal cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bad virus.
There's still a lot of risk, even
It's a
though
bad
the
virus.
pill can take care of AIDS.
So my mother was incorrectly diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I've seen people die with Alzheimer's. I was not and did not stick around to watch her deteriorate.
Mm-hmm. So she was having the
I feel
Alzheimer's trouble
horrible
when you were
about
back
that now.
east?
That's when she was diagnosed with it.
So that was part of your panic to leave, was her situation and all your friends you'd witnessed dying.
Yeah, I just didn't want to witness somebody else that I loved deteriorate and die. Turns out she doesn't have Alzheimer's. She was treated for mini strokes that she never had, at least 9 mini strokes. The medication used to treat that can cause memory loss. The Depakote she was on, I'm not even sure why she was on it, can also cause memory loss. Dehydration can also affect your memory.
Mm-hmm.
She was dehydrated because she was pretty sick. Turns out she didn't have Alzheimer's. She never had the first stroke.
Mm-hmm.
She was later correctly diagnosed with having a form of epilepsy, which was a result of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those decades earlier.
She's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to her every other day.
Yep.
If I'm not stressed out.
I wonder if
She's
that
fine.
diagnosis was part of, adding to a statistic, because there's multiple levels in just about everything that big. Alzheimer's has layers that go almost up to the to the stars. And if they can throw another person into the category of Alzheimer's, what does that do? Does that increase funding? Does that boost statistics? Does that boost the need for certain more medications to be developed for it? So you wonder.
I'm sure that's
Yeah.
true, because in my own situation, I've had HIV that I know of since 1991. I was diagnosed with AIDS in 2002. But I was sicker prior to being diagnosed with AIDS 10 years earlier than when I was diagnosed. At the point I was diagnosed, I can never lose that diagnosis, no matter how many T cells I have, no matter how low or non-detectable my HIV is, it's non-detectable. I still have that diagnosis as having AIDS. And because of that, the amount of federal money and state money that's appropriated remains at the level it is, if not increased.
So money, a certain amount of money is now linked to your name that they don't want to ever go away.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same with Alzheimer's or any other disease
Wow.
that's not curable.
Right.
I'm sure of it.
So did the fleeing of all that, did it work for a little while coming out to California? Did it make you feel better for a while? Or how'd that end up with your plan? Or
No, it
I'm just gonna check, make sure we're still connected. Go ahead, keep going.
I started using drugs again.
Yeah.
I had been clean and sober for about 10 years, and I was just overwhelmed and started smoking meth. I never touched meth in my life.
So coming to California, that started.
Yeah. And I ended up becoming homeless for about a year. But as of November 28th, this past year, I'm 6 years clean.
Wow, good, excellent.
My 1 year anniversary fell on a Thanksgiving, and I knew.
Yeah, you can't start on Thanksgiving. That's terrible. Wow.
I was thankful.
Yeah, yeah, being thankful.
I
That's
have
right.
some greater serenity, and it's very fleeting, than I would if I was still using.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But I wasn't in physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in physical pain every day,
Wow.
but I have to deal with it.
Well, it's six on one or half dozen the other. You take one thing and have other side effects, or you take the other way and have other side effects. So you'd have you've decided you'd have a much worse life if you'd stayed using, and not felt the pain you feel every day than feeling the pain you feel and not using.
A lot of my physical pain is totally unnecessary as a result of a broken insurance system.
Mm-hmm.
The prosthetist that I was seeing accepts my insurance, but because he's in a different, and he crafted a brand new prosthesis. I waited over a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
He made it, but it still needs the height and the angle adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I switched doctors because the bus no longer went to where his office is located. This new insurance I have, I can get a ride there. He accepts my new insurance. My new doctor accepts my insurance, and I can't get an approval for him to finish this leg.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using a leg that's a good 2 inches too short. It literally falls off when I'm walking.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
insanity.
Now
It's total
that makes
insanity.
me, staying on that subject, that makes me ask you. I'm guessing that you see things on a very macro level, because your opinions online about your support for President Trump and your support for border security and a lot of things like that. You decided to go a direction that is, I think, taking a lot of things into consideration. Now, with your medical treatment situation being as bad as it is, how do you reconcile the big push that happened through Obamacare and what you're dealing with? Are those not connected? Is it just something else administrative?
I would have medical insurance anyway because of the fact that I'm on disability.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's slid right off the table. So you okay?
But it's all related.
Mm-hmm.
HIPAA, which was passed when Clinton was when Clinton was president,
Which means that certain information about you can't be shared for certain reasons.
actually prevents providers from being held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
I was a client of Desert AIDS Project. When I first moved from Paris to Desert House, or to Palm Springs, I was a client of Desert AIDS Project. They told me I had to reestablish residency by living in a homeless shelter. I was going to be there anyway for 30 days, in spite of the fact that I already lived in Riverside County for 11 months at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But because my state ID did not have my physical address, they refused to accept it for Paris.
So the
But I
bureaucracy
had
caught you
mail from the federal, state, the voter registration, and they would not accept that mail as proof of my residence.
So it sounds like HIPAA did everything that it wasn't intended to do, and it did nothing of what it was intended to do.
Exactly.
It tied up people's right to immediate care in a bureaucracy, because it made it so that they can't verify that you're here, that you're showing that you have the problem and you have other facts, but they say nope.
So I ended up being at Roy's for 60 days,
Okay.
Roy's homeless shelter,
Mm-hmm.
and my time was up. But in the meantime, I was supposed to get a referral from Desert AIDS. I never got the referral for Roy's homeless shelter to place me in housing.
Mm-hmm.
So I called former Representative Mary Bono Mack, who since remarried and divorced again. office and was told, we don't intervene. In spite of Desert Aid's project getting millions of dollars from the federal government, her office was not going to intervene. In the meantime, I was given a form from Desert Aids that it forbid me from speaking to anybody in the building other than my caseworker.
Wow.
Because I complained at a meeting too loud. I have a right to be agitated and have righteous indignation. Because somebody dropped the ball repeatedly.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
them
waited
saying, don't hold us accountable.
So there was no way I could file a complaint with Desert Aids itself, because I was forbidden to speak to anybody that would investigate it. So I didn't. But I waited till Mary Bono Mack left office, and I contacted Dr. Ruiz's office. Greg Rodriguez was his district director at the time. He flat out told me he was a former client of Desert Aids, and he was a board member, and then said, we're not going to investigate anything. So I investigated. Every member of that board, including Barbara Keller, who just died, I hope you burn in hell. I contacted her, she wouldn't do anything for me. I contacted every one of those board members. Every one of them has contributed to every campaign Dr. Ruiz has had.
Wow.
You're getting federal money, and we're giving you money back, and nobody will say anything.
Wow.
The federal money is matched by the state of California. I contacted my state senator, my state assembly member. I contacted the governor, Brown, at the time. Brown's office sent me a letter back. I couldn't believe it. I still have it. Thank you for sharing your personal problems with our office. If we can do anything for you, please contact us.
I've gotten so many of those from
What the hell are
Feinstein's
you
office.
talking about?
Feinstein's office says the same thing.
I sent a letter to, speaking of Feinstein, I sent a letter to Feinstein. 2 days before my mailing this letter, I got an email from her office urging me to contact all these people in support of more funding for people with AIDS. I can't remember the program. It was the Ryan White something act. She wanted me to, she sent me an email. I'm supposed to support this. It's the same act that funds Desert AIDS Project. So she sends me a letter back after I sent my letter stating that her, this Fitzgerald was the person that actually sent the letter from her office, stating she wasn't sure that Desert AIDS was a recipient of federal money, and I had approved that they received the money and then contact me again. I said, this is hopeless. These people have no clue. You're asking
not there
me
to help.
You fundraise for this program, but then you don't even know that this organization benefits from the program. In spite of you having spoken there twice that I know of.
Wow, it's upsetting, and what gives you the hope in your continuous fight to try to get information out? What gives you that hope to keep fighting, knowing how mistreated you've been?
All I can say is I'm a stubborn Polak. In 1991, when I found out I had HIV, I had just reconnected with my brother. We were estranged. I spent the day at his house, had dinner, and he was going to drive me back home. And he said, but go to my doctor's with me first. I have to do a follow-up appointment. You can wait in the office. He was in with that doctor for a good 45 minutes. I've never seen, and I'm wondering why. He came out and looked at me and said, my doctor wants to speak to you. And they just had this, look on his face I've never seen.
You get bad news?
4 or 6. So I go inside, and the doctor asked me if I had AIDS. Did I ever get an AIDS test? And I said, why? And she said, well, we got your test results here.
Oh, your brother wanted you to go to the doctor because he wanted to have him look at you too.
No,
Oh.
my brother was there to get X-ray results.
Okay. Was it the same doctor you'd been going to?
No.
How'd they
I
have
had
your
never
record?
seen this woman before in my life.
So you show up to the office to support your brother, and they come out with your records.
He got X-rays at a mental health medical center. That's where I was getting my HIV treatment. Instead of sending his X-rays, they sent my HIV results to his doctor.
Oh.
So I immediately told her, I'm suing you and anybody else I can, because you cannot release somebody's medical records without their consent. I was in court for 20 years.
Wow.
I had over 20 decisions. They kept appealing rulings the presiding judge was making. This doctor's lawyers and the hospital's lawyers. She didn't work for that hospital. She was completely independent. There were over, I think, 17 or 18 decisions ruled in my favor. Well, after waiting 20 years, I was getting pretty sick, physically, and I was actually worried, and my lawyer was worried that I would die before trial.
Wow.
So he told me to accept a visiting judge. In Ohio, a visiting judge is only a visiting judge because they're, by law, forbidden from running for re-election. They're too old. But somehow you can hear cases to catch up on the backlog.
I see.
Every decision made in my favor was overturned the first day of trial.
Wow.
And I still won.
Wow.
I got a judgment from the jury against the hospital, against the doctor, and then the hospital settled out of court.
And this is all about them sharing your medical information
Sharing my
without your...
HIV records with my brother's doctor, and then her sharing that information with him.
Wow. So you're a stubborn Polak.
I'm a stubborn Pole. I knew I was right.
Yeah. Wow.
And
so you've had some successes for being stubborn and pushing as long as you...
But that taught me something else. God works in mysterious ways. Because when I was being sworn in, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God, I was really angry, buying in all that leftist garbage of the time. You know, it's like a rite of passage. If you're gay, you're supposed to hate God, and I bought into all that. And I said I didn't believe in God. My lawyer jumped up, screamed, I object, I need to talk to my client.
Yep.
He told me you just cost yourself about $1 million, minimum.
Really?
I walked away with about $40,000.
Wow.
But thank God I didn't get the $1 million, because I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Thank God you didn't give them what?
Thank God
Given.
I didn't get the $1 million.
Oh,
I
wow.
wouldn't be sitting here today, because after my lawyer got his cut, I got like $25,000 after expenses, and it was gone in a matter of 3 months.
You'd have wiped yourself
It
out
was gone in 3 months.
with $1 million. Wow. Wow. Wow.
It works.
Jeez. Yeah. Well, you're where you're supposed to be, which is not obviously not sitting in some ivory tower somewhere, because you know you'd probably be in an urn underneath it. But you know, you're here to fight today because of who you are and what made you who you are.
I know if something is right, it's right. If something is wrong, it's wrong, and it has to be exposed.
So when did you start to get convinced that there is something stronger than something opposite of what they told you to believe about a spiritual force that's out there?
I was raised Catholic, and
so you had the roots planted, but then
but
you got pulled into the cult
but that
of the cult of the left. You got pulled into that for a while.
well,
And then was it your lawyer that got you?
Something happened when my father died. I found out that pretty much everything I had been taught or told about my family was a lie.
Wow.
At some point, my sister discovered a birth certificate for my sister Penny. We were young children, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and asked my mother about it. And at that point, we were informed Penny died. Penny died. When my father died, the day of his funeral, somebody called my sister Marilyn, and she didn't say who it was at the time. Turns out it was my uncle. Informed her, your sister's really not dead. Penny's still alive. Turns out she was adopted by my aunt, which suddenly made a lot of stuff make sense. My mother and all her siblings were in foster homes. Her twin brothers died after falling out of a window. It may have been intentional. To this day, nobody is sure. But they were all placed in foster homes, separate foster homes. And she and her sister Lillian, they hadn't seen each other in years. And they were in school. They happened to be in the same school. And a nun noticed their names, and they reconnected and hung out pretty much every day until she was like 19. And suddenly, they stopped hanging out together. And I never understood that. Then when her sister died, she went to her funeral. Like, why is she going to her funeral? You know, you haven't talked to her or seen each other in 30 years. You're a half hour away. It was because my aunt adopted my sister.
And that was part of the lie that you figured out later on after your dad died. Yeah,
It made sense.
Yeah.
And then I find out, Penny told me, she saw my mother and she knew who she was instantly. Because my mother and aunt still communicated by letter and sent photos and stuff. But didn't see each other, didn't talk on the phone. Penny saw her at the funeral home and she said, now it's not the time, you have to leave. And my mother was devastated.
Wow.
But she taught me that your word is everything. She promised my father she would not tell anybody. None of us were supposed to know. That's on his deathbed. He made her promise to God. I don't know why. Her word was so important to her, she was literally suicidal.
Wow.
So I eventually met my sister. It was very unusual. We didn't have that shared history. And the shared rage and anger with each other, you know, because of everything that the rest of us endured. So we really had a deep bond.
So let me ask you a
She
question.
died.
And then she died? Really?
But I knew her from probably 15 years.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a wonderful
Good
relationship.
time to bury a lot of stuff. And
So when I finally got sober, when I got sober the first time, I was told to make a list of resentments. One of them was her. I assumed she had a better life, and I found out my uncle was an abusive drunk, and their mother was, my aunt was pretty emotionally unstable. I'm not sure why. I'm sure because of stuff that happened in the foster care.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Give me a short answer to it, because I want to go right into saying something to the camera after you answer it. So is it true that you had enough experiences in life to show you that you really should question question what's really going on here, and that's what led you to kind of having a better understanding that things are not as they seem politically, world-wise, nation-wise. You know, is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I want, as he was talking,
I'd say one thing.
we're not done. I just want to say,
Well,
I want to say something
go
about
ahead.
that. The reason I'm doing these is because everyone has a story, and this interview is about Desert Hot Springs and a Desert Hot Springs resident getting a chance to say his story. And as you can clearly see, somebody who lives in this city, who votes in this city, who likes living here, I think, for the most part. He's talked about how he'd like to get back to Cleveland, but it sounds like he's emotional, and at times he can go back and forth. But he still lives here, and he deserves the opportunity to be heard. And I believe that about everybody. Everybody has a deep, mile-wide story. Even if you live on $100 a month, or you live on $100,000 a month, somebody should give you an opportunity to speak. And he's proven himself, from what I've watched on social media. He's proven himself that he's a continual guy. He will continue to keep up the fight. He's steady. He's stable in what I can see, because he's consistent in his postings, and he responds to people. He asks questions. He doesn't go wild with his questions. He doesn't disappear for years at a time or months at a time. So I thought he was very interesting, and I'm glad he's here to share this with you. Even though you may not know his family story, the one he just told, that was about his sisters and his father, you may not know that. He knows it, and he gets a chance to say it. And I want to use his opportunity to say those things to you to link them to his passion for other things that he's trying to help people with. You know, even though he's carrying this big burden of his history and his family past on a daily basis, he still takes the time out to fight for others. And I can see that because he sets aside his problems, and he doesn't ever go on and complain about his own problems, except for the one we're going to get into a little later about the city, which is what is a nuisance to him, as far as I can tell. I haven't lived it, but he's shared some things. He's spent some money on trying to fix this. I know he's got security cameras going so that he can keep recording and posting what keeps happening on his street. Now he lives right in, you don't live too far from one of the city council members. He lives right in the heart, you could probably shoot a potato gun from City Hall and it'd probably land on his front parking lot where he lives. So he's pretty close. He's right in the downtown area. He's not all the way down, but so he's in the heart of a lot of riff-raffy stuff that goes by. His neighbors probably come and go at times in different homes around him. It's not the best area, and I don't take that for granted that I'm not in that area. I try to say I'm fine. Let's expose some other people's problems so that we can, because I'm not going to complain. I don't complain about anything compared to some other people who are living in this town. I got it made. Compared to some people, I'm not going to complain. Let's show their problems. So what was the point you wanted to make about your family thing before I was going to say that?
My mother was part of a Bible study. Well, she wanted to be part of a Bible study. And the pastor fought it for over a year. You're not going to have a Bible study. You're not going to have it. And I kept thinking about that. Why is this? Why is this? And they finally relented. The day that the Bible study was supposed to start, he was transferred to another parish. I thought that was odd. Maybe 2-3 years later, I see him on the news. He's collecting toy guns to promote peace. I support our Constitution. And I called him up and I said, I think you have an ulterior motive. I was just being a smart ass. I didn't know anything about his sexual proclivities, but I said, are you really just trying to meet kids so that you can molest them? This priest started dropping the F-bomb, screaming, why are you doing this to me? I thought this was a
very warning sign answer.
I thought this was a really odd response. So I get off the phone, he hung up on me, and I'm thinking, well, maybe other people are calling him, giving him a hard time. Who knows? Maybe 6 months later, I'm reading the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and that same priest was indicted.
Wow.
They dropped the charges because the statute of limitations had expired.
But your gut was proven.
A year later, I'm reading the Cleveland Catholic Diocese spent over $1 million lobbying Columbus to shorten the statute of limitations. It was already too short. It was shortened.
Wow. So now
But
they can do that stuff, and then it's off the record really fast now.
Yeah. And I thought, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just it's struck a raw nerve.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It really did.
You've told me several, so I know you. What seems to come across your mind a lot is people doing wrong things and getting away with it. That really itches you, doesn't it? It really bugs you. Yeah, yeah, it bugs you that they can do so wrong and they get away with it. You know, each time and you know, I applaud you for your courage to fight. Now let's shift gears a little bit. Now let's get on to Desert Hot Springs specifically. Like you know, maybe not your problem. You've called animal control and your side of the story, and there's always two sides of the story. So I'm not going to side with you. I want you to say your side. You've called animal control because you got a neighbor issue that has loose running dogs, and now before that, I want to ask you. You're tied to on Facebook. You're tied to Councilmember Russell Betts. I know he sometimes comments on your stuff. Why is it? And this was before I started this interview. I told you I like to get into the other layers of the conversation or the issue rather than the first part. Tell Russell Betts to get on something. That's he would have already if he was going to. So I'm not faulting him. What I wanted to ask you is why do you think it is that so many people see these problems and they just act like it's not happening? How do you think what's going through their minds to see so many problems, and do you think they just say, well, we can't help everybody, and not that everybody should be helped, but you know, sometimes when you're dealing with something, and I'm not saying it's the dog thing, it could be anything, because a lot of people say, hey, I called, nobody shows up, or I call, it's common, and they say they can't be everywhere. So I'm wondering how you think it's so ignored that so many people have so many problems. Is it that they're trying to get you to just get used to tougher conditions so that they don't have to come back out later? What do you think?
I don't know. I do know that the councilwoman that just tendered her resignation,
Penny Elizabella,
is dating the son of one of the biggest slumlords in Desert Hot Springs, Michael Bickford. I wanted to be more active in the city, but I'm not going to attend meetings in Miracle Springs Resort because Michael Bickford owns that. And I have sent emails to various council members and Mayor Mathis. Please do not have meetings there. The city should not be further enriching somebody who's only interested in collecting money and not fixing his properties, and is a thief. He had judgments against him for wage theft, and over $100,000. And this is somebody that did contribute to Councilman Betts' campaign. And I agree with Councilman Betts on a lot of stuff.
Sure.
But you can't take money from dirty people.
Well, it shows people's character, where their character is riding, and I don't think any one person is responsible for a majority of stuff. I think that it's kind of a sentiment. It's kind of like I believe there's two types of people in this world. It can be boiled to two kind of major groups. People who will see wrongdoing and go, and then people who will see wrongdoing and they just can't leave it alone. They have to do something. Even if they do something and they feel like they lost, they at least did something. It's a spirit of fighting bullies, and that's what I have. I can't deny it. If I see somebody being bullied, I have to walk over and intervene. I just can't leave it alone. And then there's people who kind of, then there's different scales within those categories. Some people who actually enjoy it. They'll see somebody being bullied and they like it. They get off on it. I'm not saying any people in the city that are part of the city are part of that, but I think the whole sentiment, they all reside in that same kind of brain wave, I believe, because there's so much that's just right out in the open that they just drive by. They don't even talk about. I can't see something, at least not remember it or talk about it or push it. I mean, there's a lot of issues that in this city that I see that I can't cover, but I'm always working to expose something that's bad. Rather than trying to put a sidewalk in over on Little Morongo Road. I mean, who's walking on Little Morongo Road? I mean, they were talking about that when they said when they expand that road, they're going to put in a sidewalk in front of all the cannabis cultivators in that area. So the connection that they have to Bickford, I agree with you. There's something weird there where they just keep recycling through that same facility for something like that. And I'm not saying that I don't know if Bickford actually takes money for those meetings they have. I honestly believe that he just donates the rooms, because I've gone to the Historical Society meetings, or when they have the public speaker series on the Historical Society, and I've been to a couple of them, and I think they're very thankful to Mike Bickford, and I don't think that them taking the room for an hour and a half. I don't know what the deal is. That's all going to be hidden from us. They're never going to really talk about that stuff, but I don't think it's always money. I just think that it's more of a camaraderie, and they know they can rely on each other for things that they need. And I have heard only good things about Bickford from that group, and I've heard a lot of bad things about Mike Bickford from average, ordinary people. Now, what I do with somebody like Mike Bickford is I take who are the people that like him, and I break those people down in my mind, and I figure out what they're into. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, the people that like Mike Bickford are people that I don't like. I don't like what they stand for. I don't like how they let people's problems just get ignored. So that tells me who aligns with someone like Mike Bickford. And I don't think is that your landlord's situation? Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's a property owned by Mike Bickford.
Well, no.
Okay.
I was in a rental owned by Bickford, and she got an eviction notice because I complained. The mail carrier told me that they had been requesting for over 10 years that the mailboxes be replaced. I couldn't believe that the Postal Service didn't own the mailboxes. They were actually owned by Michael Bickford, and you didn't even need to break into them. They were just open. They didn't lock, which is why I got a post office box. But something like that. And when people were making threats, his rental office didn't do anything about it. So I got evicted and ended up in a place that was even worse. And then that rent jumped up by $300 for a freaking studio. So I needed to leave again. And I asked Russell Betts if he knew any landlords. But, ignoring the fact that he was taking campaign funds from Bickford, a slumlord.
Yeah.
So he referred to me to where I'm at now, and it has been a nightmare since day one.
Okay, so he referred to that landlord, but ultimately it was your choice to do business with this landlord.
But
yeah,
he's aware.
But it's the same thing. It's what I was saying.
And he's aware of what's happening.
Yeah,
there.
and that's the opposite of how I am. If I find out somebody does something immoral or doesn't really take care of business, I just won't refer them anymore. So. And it's possible that Russell Betts didn't know anything about this landlord, but maybe he did. And if he did, and he still referred it just shows the character where it leans. And I want to be clear on something. I'm not saying Mike Bickford is a bad person. I'm not saying Russell Betts is a bad person. That is not what's going on. I have no proof of anything that they're doing illegal. What we're talking about here is somebody who. I'm not saying this is what Mike Bickford does, but let's just use this as an example. Okay, a wrapper on the floor or a piece of garbage blowing across the road. Maybe the kind of people that I'm talking about are the people who would just go, not my trash, and ignore it, as opposed to somebody who would see it and pick it up. It's not a crime to let a piece of trash go across the road. It's not a crime to refer a landlord to somebody who doesn't keep their properties up. That's not a crime. What we're not talking about here is getting these people on things. It's about understanding where their minds operate, what wavelength their minds operate. And what I've found is that a lot of the people who run this city operate in the same wavelength in their mind. And it's not a wavelength that I operate on. and it's a wavelength. If you break into it deeper, you find out it's not really like, it doesn't give you the warm feeling. It gives you the heebie-jeebies. You know, when you're around them, it's like there's some sort of possession that's going on. And I'm not saying Mike Bickford's possessed by anything. That's not what I'm saying. I want to keep telling you guys that's what I'm going to focus on over the next, who knows how long I'm going to be doing this, is that underlying, that meaty fat layer of where things operate. Anybody can look at the surface and say, oh, you signed lease is due this day, blah, blah, blah. They said they're not responsible for this. You're a tenant, you can't. Anybody can do that. What I focus on is the layer below that goes way deep. And that's where you can really find out a lot about what's going on. Who's hating who? Who's trying to tear who down? What are their motivations? What are their objectives for doing that? That's where I operate. And there's a lot to be learned for that. So I'm going to try to share my experiences and point out some ties over a long period of time here to further bring that third eye out of people, because you have to, do you agree? You have to find ways to get information to resonate on other vibrational levels rather than just, you know, black ink on paper. There's more being, I mean, the way news articles are written in a structured format that they start out the story that tries to shift you a certain way, and then they'll tell you the positive of it, and then they'll tell you the negative of it at the end, which is what they want to leave you with. They want to leave you with the last thought, which is that, you know, here's what's being proposed, and you know it would be a great thing for the country. So they'll say the article, and then they'll say, here's why it's good, but then here's why it's bad, and it won't work. And then people will close the article and they go, well, I'm not for it, because the last thing you hear is that it's not good for the country. So there's a lot of manipulation going on in a lot of ways, and that's what I'm going to focus on. Sorry.
I've actually had, in a lot of cases, the exact opposite, but as dangerous. I've gone to a lot of committee meetings, different government, mostly in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was the office you ran for? Tell us in a minute.
The Democratic State Central Committee in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Before I lose my train of thought.
Yeah.
I've gone to
You've had the
so
opposite
many
experience,
meetings,
is what you were saying.
I've gone to so many meetings, and I know what I witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
And I will read something completely different in the paper.
Mm.
But a lot of times, I will read, like, the most important point is at the very end of the article.
Mm.
I would say most people will only read the first 2 or 3 paragraphs.
Yeah.
So they're not reading
I see.
what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
That happens too.
Yeah,
I've seen it firsthand.
Well, I believe that the high-powered news agencies.
But it's manipulation,
yeah.
by the way.
Oh yeah, no, they've made it so that they can get the intended outcome based upon every type of reader. People who are going to read just the headline, people who are going to read a few sentences in, people who are going to just jump to the bottom, people who are going to go to the comments. They'll just delete the comment section if they don't like what people are going to get out of the comments. So
well,
what?
The same article will have different headlines.
Yeah.
By the same newspaper in different parts of the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
That happens.
Oh
I
yeah.
know it happens.
Yeah. They can shape your opinion. Now, what's going on over there on your street in your town? In your part of town. That's.
I moved in a year ago, December. Within a matter of 3 or 4 days, the people next door were letting their dogs loose. They tried to attack,
clear violation.
Tried to attack my roommate's dog.
Mm-hmm.
So I called animal control. Not shortly after that, my roommate was assaulted by the son-in-law of the people next door.
So basically, when the animal control came around, it basically just whacked at the bee's nest.
Right.
Is what happened. Okay.
My roommate's been assaulted. That wasn't enough for them. They started screaming across the street at anybody walking by that were pedophiles. I'm not a pedophile, my roommate's not a pedophile, but that's how you can get somebody killed. Because of that.
So there's a perfect example of secondary results based upon one saying something. They're not saying kill this guy, but they're throwing out the term that can potentially get that you killed.
Well, about 6 months ago in New York, there was a juvenile killed in a bodega by about it was 30-some people. They rushed the bodega and killed him based on a false accusation. That's pretty vicious and dangerous and potentially deadly to accuse somebody of that. And sure enough, the woman across the street is now screaming at us, pedophile, pedophile, because this, and it started because the police told us, document the stuff that's happening. So when the dog goes outside to get walked, my roommate carries his camera and video records. And because the granddaughter got in the video, suddenly he's filming her and he's a pedophile. Well, the neighbor across the street screaming pedophile. She's tried to run him over 2 different times. She's threatened him with a gun. We have video recording of her saying, "I'm going to shoot you." The police don't even look at it. They're telling us to get a restraining order. A restraining order is not going to stop her from shooting somebody. It's not.
Yeah.
She's clearly irrational. She speeds her car over real quick, jumps out with a bag. I don't know what the hell's in that bag. I don't.
So for people who would say you may be overreacting to what you're saying, what would you say to people who think you might be overreacting about this? Meaning about this could escalate. What grounds do you have to say that this could escalate? Have there been other things that have happened on your street that show you that that's the mentality of these people?
There was a drive-by shooting directly across the street.
There was. When did that happen? Within this year or last year? Or?
February last year.
Wow.
A year ago, February.
So you're ground zero for anything that can happen
Right.
bad.
There was
Really
a
bad.
drive-by shooting.
Wow.
And the woman next door, there's probably 10 people living over there. It's a 1-bedroom apartment. She's got a tent set up on her patio. I believe there are people sleeping in that tent. Because sometimes in the middle of the night I can't sleep because their music is blasting through the wall. 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'll go outside to smoke a cigarette and I hear somebody talking. I think there's people sleeping in that tent.
Now let me.
But it looks like a junkyard. I mean, I've sent photos to code enforcement. She's a hoarder. I've sent multiple photos to code enforcement. I've contacted them 4 different times. They've never come out once. They've got furniture sitting on the sidewalk between outside their door. It's a fire hazard. I've contacted the fire department. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
Nothing happens.
My mind always goes to what could possibly be going on, and I want to throw out there. I'm not saying this is going on because I have no details about what you're going through, but if I was to speculate in my mind how something like that can continue on, I have to start wondering if the landlord and the city, meaning police or because people are self-serving. That's a fact. They will do things based upon how it's going to affect them, and that's the same with police officers, the same with city council, same with your grocery bagger. They're going to do things based upon how it's going to affect them. So if you have an arrangement where the police know where they're at in front of your place when they get called out, they know the facts about it, meaning they know who owns the building. They know they're going to start jumping to the next steps of what will happen if they start coming down on this situation. They're going to start thinking about how it's going to affect them later. Either they're going to go too far and their job's going to be in jeopardy because they're going to tick off the wrong person, or they're going to waste resources because they're going to see that it's going to be a failed journey to go into this and dig into this problem, and that's going to come back and reflect negatively on them. The superior is going to say, why did you waste it? You knew that wasn't going to go anywhere. Things like that. This is where my mind starts to wander, and I don't know what else could be going on. But
I did receive an eviction notice on my door, and the people in Unit 2 received the same exact eviction notice. So I called the management, and he told me, "Don't worry about it." And then he tells me it was basically because the police told him that he needs to put the fear of God in us. He emailed me a letter that the police department sent him. And then they sent the same letter to me, stating they're not coming to the residence anymore unless it's a matter of life or death. Well, if a college student can get arrested last week for making terrorist threats, for threatening to shoot somebody, then this woman across the street who's threatening to shoot my roommate, he's got her on video, 2 feet from
Yeah.
him, screaming, "Do you want to die?"
Right.
Why is she not arrested for terrorist threats?
Yeah. See, that's where I
All
refuse.
because of this lie.
I refuse to go into
Somebody's
the
a pedophile.
emotional side of it, because I have to think on a rational, controlled level about what's going on, and at some point you start to wonder if it's intentional. If the ignoring of your problem is just intentional, they don't want to do anything about it, and I don't. That doesn't mean that cops are bad. That means what is the next level you go to, and that requires digging deeper. So if that was a shot across the bow saying, here's an eviction letter, you both need to calm this down, that could be one thing. These are the mind things that could be going on, because nobody's going to be truthful with you. You're not going to call them and say, did you just try to warn me with that? No, it was a mistake. That's all they're going to say. So you have to discern, you have to use all these talents and powers that you've been given, I believe through God, to be able to understand deeper, and not lose your cool, not worry about it. But you're right, it's hypocritical how some people can make threats and they get, made an example of, or they're arrested, but others get away with it.
Now the management is telling me they contacted code enforcement. Well, why don't you just go inside her apartment and see what the hell's in there? If it looks like a junkyard outside, I can just imagine. This fake leg I have, it is not sealed. It's like the foot itself slips on this other foot, so it's open. It is very, and I hope to God it doesn't happen now. I shook it before I left.
Yeah.
But cockroaches crawl in there.
Wow.
I'll be
That's
in a
what's in your
doctor's
building.
office or something, and cockroaches are crawling out of the bottom of my fake leg. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But I have COPD. I'm always having to spray stuff. It's a waste of my damn money.
Bad breath.
But,
bad to breathe in.
This is not good for me. It is not good for me. And I'm wondering, and I'm sure some of it is from the nonstop stress of being
That's what I was going to ask you about, is how you
threatened.
handle all that.
But my blood pressure is higher now than when I was smoking meth every day for 3 years.
Yeah.
It is so stressful. All night long, this thumping music, and then they're banging on the walls. It is insane. You go outside to walk the dog, people are screaming at you. And I've done everything that I think people are supposed to do and get some sort of response.
Yeah.
And all I get is more crap.
And you know what the heartless side of all this would suggest to you, and they'd say 4-letter word, move.
I've been told that many times by the police. Just
that's why I say the heart of this city.
Not that easy.
The heart of this city is cold, and it's shriveled up, and it can be beating again. I'm a strong believer that when people feel hopelessness, they just kind of withdraw and they give up, and they become hardened, and they just accept problems for what they are.
It can lead to a relapse.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
And then the exact opposite happens when people feel like there's hope. There's an explosion of positive energy that people will then put out, and they will get along more with people that they don't agree with, and they'll take care of their place more for their neighbor, because there's this it's that sense of hopelessness that poisons. So, and I believe that our city and the core of our city has that sprinkled all through it. It's just that sense of hopelessness. I mean, I go in shops along Palm, and there's hopeless, desperate people walking down the street all the time.
I think it was Friday, or maybe Thursday. I heard a loud noise. I'm pretty much deaf in my right ear, so I can't always tell what a sound is. I can't tell what direction it's coming from, but I heard something really loud. And I said to my roommate, what was that noise? And not 10 seconds later, I hear all this banging. Somebody from next door tried to rip down the fence to my patio. And it was like that for 3 days until it got fixed. That's insane.
There's just wild animals anytime could attack your place.
So the next day, this woman that's threatened to shoot my roommate is screaming across the street. And this is the thing. When the police were called, and they do come back on in spite of this letter stating we're not coming back out.
They're legally obligated to, but you know what they're going to do, which is
when they were looking at the fence, they saw a cell phone, and it was the cell phone of the daughter of the woman next door. But there's so many people living there, anybody could have had it. Who knows?
Yeah.
But for some reason, they went across the street to the house next to where the woman is threatening to shoot my roommate. So the following day, after this fence was destroyed, she's screaming across the street she paid the boyfriend of the owner of the phone to kick my roommate's ass.
Wow.
Why? This woman doesn't even know either one of us.
They live off the drama.
Based on a lie. Based on a lie.
What was the lie again?
That we're pedophiles.
Oh yeah.
We dared to call the animal control.
Yeah. It's the
But
perpetual state of drama that you live in.
She'll go into that little parking lot. You saw it. Right in front of my window, thumping this F. Donald Trump song. You know, she just hits it over and over and over.
Yeah, she's just pushing your buttons. That's all she's trying to do. It's juvenile. It's petty.
She's got that ghetto gangster attitude.
Yeah.
The grandmother next door is telling the grandkids we're snitches, and I remark to the police. You know, they're bringing these kids up to be gangsters.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
So you're not going to be silent. You're not going to be quiet. You're going to have your opinion. That's what I said with David yesterday here. We have opinions. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion, and we're not going to be censored and silenced because we have those opinions. You have an opinion that what's happening next door to you, is wrong, and you share that with people. And what they do is they retaliate. They're trying to bully you and to intimidate you into shutting up. And that all is a spirit. That's all a wavelength. That's all a brainwave activity that people, it's not black and white. It's not on paper. You can't quantify that. That's an energy field that people put out. It's a hatred towards someone based upon this or that, but we all sense it, we all feel it, we know what that is. So that's what we're fighting. I believe that's what 80 to 90% of our battles in this world is personal battles on sub-wavelengths that we have to learn to harness and take control of and use to our advantage in long games, rather than just saying, call police, tell them, stop neighbor. You can't, it won't work. You have to fight them on different levels. And one of them is never giving up, never quitting, using things to your advantage, never being stupid. You're not going to go out and battle these people in front of your house. It's the inner strength to endure when they do play that music in front of your place, just to push your buttons. Life's not easy, but knowing how other people think and work is a great win on our behalf, because we know what to expect, and we don't put ourselves in really jeopardizing situations. I'm sure that your situation could have been very dangerous at times, and you withdrew. You knew I'd have a better battle later on.
I had a window busted out about a month ago.
Yeah.
From the boyfriend of somebody next door.
And these are people that pull up to you in street lights at the corner. As you drive around town, they just roam around town, and this is what they're into: is pushing people's buttons and who they disagree with, and calling them things that they're not. They can't prove that any of that stuff without evidence, but they do it anyway. And
the boyfriend a couple of days ago was inches from my roommate's face. Do you have a lighter? Do you have a lighter? I need to light my cigarette.
It's all open public space once you get out your door.
It was a ploy, because I know if my roommate reached for a lighter, he was going to get punched in the face. And he told him, back off, back off.
Yeah.
It's shady.
Yeah.
It's really shady.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, you were smoking crack all night. Use that lighter. I'm sure it burnt up.
So what do you
use that lighter?
What makes you laugh? What are some things because I don't want to be all dark. I know some.
I'm more emotional than I normally am, because I'm just so physically tired.
Yeah, but you can't go on just serious all the time. I know you have fun.
I like bizarre comedies. One of my favorite movies is Mommy Must Die. Charles Lawton is an old drag queen from 40 years ago.
Yeah.
He plays the mother. Jason Priestley's in it. He plays the daughter's boyfriend, but he's also, because he wants the money, it's a very rich family.
Yeah.
But he's also having sex with the son and the maid. It's a very bizarre movie. Very bizarre.
Yeah.
But Charles Lawton plays the mother, not as a drag queen. You're supposed to believe this is actually a woman. It is a very bizarre movie. The father gets poisoned. They try to frame the mother. It's just a bizarre movie. And I've seen it probably 100 times.
Yeah.
Every time I see it, I laugh my ass off. That, and it's a mad world.
Mm-hmm. Yep. My kids have been shown that several times from my father-in-law.
I
Yep.
laugh my ass off every
Yeah.
time I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. The farcical. You like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Bean. Mr.
Bean.
Bean.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
It's funny.
The most absurd things you can come up with.
The Red
Did
Green
you
Show.
Did you like The Young Ones when it was on the British comedy The Young Ones? It was
I don't
four.
think I've ever
No.
seen it.
Oh, you might like that. Was really bizarre. That's wild.
But the Red Green Show, that's really funny.
Mm-hmm. You have you're not all serious all the time. None of us can be.
No.
I know you are. But coming out and acting like everything is great is not what we really want to do when we want to get things done. When we want to get things fixed, you can't come out and make a joke about everything. Are you going to go to the State of the City?
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now that I'm led to believe that Bickford isn't making any money off the city having meetings here, maybe I will.
Yeah, that's at the Borrego.
But I still don't think you need to be running with snakes.
I agree. I mean, there's something going on there. Who are you in bed with? Who are you doing business with? And I don't do any business with any of those people. That's why I wanted to have our debate back in 2018 at the Hyundai, because I wasn't gonna. Because when I approached Mattis about it on the email, he's like, "Well, why don't we have it there at Miracle Springs?" And I'm like, "No."
I use medical marijuana. That was one of the reasons. I look at it now and I think this is insane to base moving thousands of miles away because you're fleeing because medical marijuana is legal in California. I look at that now and it's crazy. But I wanted to get in a warmer climate. And, the winters were killing me in Cleveland.
Yeah.
I thought on probably 40 times that last winter, and I said, this is enough.
Yeah, you don't move around very well.
But it was. I lost my train of thought.
Was it medical marijuana or was it?
Oh, so there are marijuana groups that also meet at Bickford's spa.
Yeah, the
And
CD can.
I haven't gone to him because I don't want him to profit off it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of detrimental to me because I'm not really keeping informed on what Sacramento's doing or how much the city wants to gouge us when I do buy. But it has helped me tremendously. I had to use an inhaler. I have COPD. I was using an inhaler 4 or 5 times a day. I don't need it anymore.
Wow.
But it was making me dizzy. I'm already unsteady on my feet. This is not good.
Yeah.
And then it would cause shaking in my residual limb. I would literally have to hold my leg down.
Wow.
And it was giving me headaches. I'm thinking, why am I taking this? I'm not taking it anymore. I take a blood pressure pill. It's really not working because of stress. But put it this way, I was on 17 prescriptions when I came to California. I'm down to 5. I
Excellent.
take a pain pill every once in a while, 3 antivirals, and the blood pressure med. So it's helped me a lot.
You actually look better than
It's
you've
helped
looked
me
in
a
the
lot.
past when I've come across you.
It's
You look
helped
better
me a
now.
lot.
Yep. Good.
It helped me put some weight on. I was on Depakote. I was speaking about Depakote earlier. Destroying my white blood cells that turned on me. But Depakote really made my weight balloon. I was up to 189 pounds at one point. And I got sick with the HIV. and I went down to 114 pounds. I wasn't making it to the bathroom in time because my fake leg wasn't fitting because the weight loss. The cannabis helped me put a lot of that weight back on. I'm losing again because of stress, but it really helped.
Yeah.
It helped a lot.
Yeah.
It helps my mood. When I come across it and I have the money, I use this tincture under my tongue. Far superior to any pain med I would ever take. Pure CBDs, specific to treat pain
Yeah.
and inflammation, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing.
CBD is not, that's not the one that people are all excited about. CBD is kind of it's one that it's a part of the cannabis that is not the mainstream, right? Isn't that true?
Well, it's a medicine. It's a THC that actually gets
THC
people
free.
high.
Yeah, THC free is a CBD oil.
But our body naturally produces cannabinoids. We have an endocannabinoid system.
Yeah.
So stress and illness and whatever, just living, depletes them, and I try to replace them.
So how are you going to make it through these coming years in your living situation right there?
Well, my lease is up in December, and I'm moving from there. I don't know where to.
Oh, you are? Yeah.
But we're not staying. We only renewed it after a year because I have this wonderful ADT contract that automatically renews if it starts over if you move before 2 years.
Okay.
And we've been moving every year because just one slum after another.
Yeah.
So we're just going to wait till this contract's over. It'll be over in December.
Yeah.
And we're not going to pay for any service. We're just going to do some stuff on our own. You can set up security cameras and get alerts and not pay a monthly fee.
Right.
Of $50. The police don't even look at the videotape anyway.
Yeah. I'm not for getting in and doing people's work for them. That's not what I'm about. I'm about, it's that old saying, feed a man, you feed him for life. If you teach a man to fish, he'll feed himself for life. So I like to talk about strategies to get people out of their situations. And it sounds like when you get into what you could call the slum situation, you get to a point with your neighbors that everybody's all fed up with each other, and it's after a year or whatever it is, and it's just reached boiling point, and you have to get to another place. Do you see other places as possibilities in town, other areas as possibilities in town with what you can afford? It won't be like that.
I don't even know yet.
But do you think there are options for what you afford to pay that are within the city that won't have so much conflict, or is it just a roll of the dice? Do you think?
It's a roll of the dice.
It is, yeah.
One of the problems is because of federal law and cannabis being scheduled the way it is, and growers and sellers not being able to actually bank their money. There's a lot of cash laying around, and what happens is a lot of this property is being bought up by growers, which is actually raising rents. So that makes it more difficult too.
Yeah. Yeah, they're putting their cash in real estate. It's a bad idea to keep cash, and it makes me take a deep breath, nervousness, because there's so much going on with this cannabis industry right now that people are totally unaware of. I mean, you're big on the cannabis. I'm not a user, but I have no problem with people using it. I don't care. It's the free will. You do what you want. What I have a problem with is people assuming things are going to be a certain way based upon what the law says, but in reality, it's very different. Now, I'm not seeing the tax revenue coming in from the cannabis into the city. It's only in the $180,000 at times whenever they kind of deposit some in at city council meetings, and it's just not impressive, the amount of money, and that makes me go to the next level. If I was a cash business, if I was being paid under the table, now would I claim all that money on my taxes? Not me personally, but the average person. Do you think that every single dollar that's paid to a guy who is helping a gardener with cash.
No.
He's not. They're not. It's impossible to make me believe that they're claiming all this money. And there's easy ways to bury it. We had losses, or the spoiled. It went spoiled. We bought it and it went spoiled. So there's ways to bury the cash and keep it from the government. Plus, the government can't audit, something that's already illegal. I mean, the federal government, the IRS, how are they going to audit dispensaries that are breaking federal law anyway? I mean, it's a big Gordian knot of a mess. They're not going to get in there. It's easy, I think, and I'm not accusing the dispensaries of doing this. I'm just thinking on a practical level what I would see happening. And there's no one that's going to convince me that they're doing everything by the book with this
Well,
cash.
I didn't understand. Harborside, it's a huge dispensary in Oakland, was raided, and it was in the newspaper that they were the second largest corporate taxpayer in Oakland, which I thought was very interesting because when it came out that Adam Sanchez was being paid by the dispensary at I can't remember now.
Yeah, at the Dillon and Paul.
Right.
Yeah,
That he
that's
got,
the Lee family, I think, owns that.
got money from them.
Yeah. Keep going.
I asked Councilman Betts, well, how much do they pay in taxes a year? And he said, well, it's proprietary rights, it couldn't be released.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that's the case, then how is it known that Harborside was the second largest taxpayer in Oakland?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Somebody knows what the numbers are, and the first thing they're going to do is they're going to say, "Oh, we can't know," because it's like they want to shoot the fly
Proprietary
away.
information.
Yeah.
But that didn't apply in Oakland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know that if somebody as big as Harborside, in the city they're in with the government in the city. They have to be buddies with them, because the government, if you make it hard for your elected servants in a city, if you make it hard for them, they're going to make it hard for you. That's just the way it is. That's how humans behave. And to think it's some other way is absurd. It's crazy to think that way, because people are human and they have retaliatory instincts, and especially when you give them power like that, you put them in a position of power, they're going to squash people who come against them. This happens all the time. So for them to pretend like it's not, no, this is, I can't do that because the law says I'll never believe that. I'm not saying it is happening. I'm just saying I believe it's way more open for that kind of stuff to happen than for them to follow the law. So I think that you can probably get that information from the city, but I heard also from Adam Sanchez that he, and I don't know him. I don't know his history. What I do know about him is that between when he ran for mayor and lost against Mayor Mattis and when he ran for city council this last time, he just disappeared. I mean, for like the 2 years, there was no. I mean, he just did his little work. He wasn't public. And then when the campaign came around, that's when he started to become more visible again. And that raises a red flag in my mind, because I believe if you really like the community, you're going to fight. You've been fighting. You've been trying to point out things on your street every chance you get. It's not like you go off and you go and just make quilts all day.
There was a slot on the safety commission that I applied for. There was a vacancy, and of course, I didn't get a response one way or the other.
Yeah, they're gonna pick people who are gonna be easy, work with them well. It's a human instinct, and that's another point I'm gonna bring in as much as I can, is that people do what's best for them. On average, they just do that. That's why they resisted me.
Gary Gardner sits on that committee, and I'm sure.
Well, he isn't anymore. Not a city council. Public safety. That's Ted Meyerhoffen and a couple.
Well, he was on it.
He was on. Oh yeah, Gary Gardner was on it. Yeah, he was on. Yeah.
He may have influenced deciding not to choose me.
I'm
because I questioned him about strengthening some laws, specifically like you're not allowed to discriminate against somebody based on national origin, religion, race, handicap, sexuality, but none of those prohibitions have any teeth to them. it's always a civil matter. And if you're being harassed every day by somebody living right next to you, and they're calling you a faggot, and I had this experience with a neighbor, and threatening to cut your other leg off because you're unbalanced, I'm going to balance you out, and calling my roommate a dirty Mexican, and you know, every law that you says you can't discriminate against this person because of this and that, he violated. And then you're doing donuts. It was a duplex. You're doing donuts in the whole parking lot. And the police are going to say this is a civil matter. None of these laws have teeth.
Yeah.
The police chief told me that there's no such thing as. I have the email. I can't forget. I can't remember how the hell he worded it. But I know that people are arrested for aggravated harassment. There's another word for it.
Yeah.
I know they are. Oh, there's no such thing. Well, maybe that's not what you call it here.
Right.
But
well, you know, it makes me wonder if because you're so outspoken, you're like a minefield to them. They just rather not. They'd rather keep stonewalling you than get involved with you because you know you're. There's so many things at play that people, again, if you default every time to they're doing what's best for them, you know, when they decide this, the police, okay, there's what they're supposed to do and there's what they're pretty much expected to do, which is, you know, if it comes down to it, they're not gonna put themselves in a situation where their job is in jeopardy, or they're gonna get into a runaround with somebody. They're just not going to do it. I'm a strong believer in that. So they may see you as somebody that, you know, you're a can of worms, and they have no reason to. It's just that I know what it is that you're probably smarter than half of them. So you know the laws better than half of them do. So they see you.
Menacing.
Aggravated menacing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
They see you as somebody who's probably going to win, and make them look bad. You know what I mean? So they'd rather just not touch you. That's like when I first moved to Desert Hot Springs here. I got into some stuff with some people here on different pages years ago, and they just acted like I didn't exist. It's like I had points and I had proof to back up my points, but they would act like, oh, I just don't exist. Like with you, you know, your problem, it just doesn't exist. You know, to them, you know, just don't follow up on it. And that, there's so many reasons possibly why, and they'll never be truthful with it, but you have to explore those ideas. And it helps you understand people. Again, biggest win you can have in life is understanding how people are going to respond to you. Predict how they're going to respond to you. And once you master that, not master, but you get really good at it, it makes your own decisions easier, because you know that's a failed attempt at a battle right there. I'm not going to go do that because it's expected they'll do something back. Like with you. You can expect that socioeconomic class of people in your neighborhood are going to respond with either aggression or violence or anger or cursing, so you can fight them in a different level and start to undermine their power.
I find it mind-boggling that there is no provision in California to deposit your rent with a court system until repairs are made. Once they've been documented, there's not that option. There is in Cleveland, which surprised me. But there's no such option here.
Explain that again to me.
If you've made your landlord aware that this needs repaired, that needs repaired. I waited 1 year and 4 months for an oven that worked.
Wow.
When I moved in, I didn't know that it didn't work because I assumed the gas was on, so I was going to switch it like the next day. Well, it took probably, I think it was 3 weeks before they came out and actually turned the gas on. So I didn't know.
But what you're saying is you have to keep paying your rent.
I didn't know that the oven didn't work.
Right.
I waited 1 year and 4 months to finally get one that works. But in Cleveland, I could have taken my rent and deposited it with the courts.
I see. With a third party.
They wouldn't get it until the repairs were made. There's no option for that here.
Right. There's less tenant rights here. Yeah. Tenant protections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've written the guy that didn't have opposition, when he ran for re-election the first time, by assembly member, I can't think of his name.
Oh, not Ruiz. Is it Jeff Stone? No, not Jeff Stone.
Anyway, I wrote him, and
Mhm.
he said it would be cost prohibitive.
Yeah. Oh, I see. He's
I
protecting
don't
a
understand
decision
where the cost is, period.
Yeah. For the court system to hold people's rent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we did pretty good. What other points do you have that you want to get out, or you want to talk about? Any subjects you want to cover? You laid out a lot. You basically gave the audience a good example of somebody who is real modest. You don't live an exorbitant life. You live a real simple life. You continue to think about having to flee the issues that are going on right in downtown Desert Hot Springs on a daily basis, probably hourly at times, and the weekends probably really when the drinking time probably comes out and drug time comes out. Probably early mornings are probably the best time, right? It's a little quieter, around there.
I hear music until 5
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning. And screaming and banging on the walls.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like this. I just feel it's.
And I know if I were to call the police for a noise disturbance, when they're knocking on the door, before they get to the door, they're going to see them, and suddenly it's quiet. So it's like, why aggravate them more? But in the meantime, they're aggravating me every day. And management, I don't think the guy even knows what to do. And I don't know.
That's property management company?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know why.
He's probably already got more work than he could possibly do every day. So here you are, you're paying, you're in a place, this place is rented, and then he's having to go back over and do double work on this because he does the paperwork for it to process it at your check every month, but then, you got these issues coming up. So he's going to always slide it off and deal with his daily issues.
But to not know how many people are living in the unit and that they even had dogs in the first place.
Well, but again, that could be a situation where if he cracks down on them, then he would have to crack down on all the other ones. So that's the line of thinking. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but you have to think in multidimensional. So and I believe he's doing what he is best for him.
Well, the people in Unit 2 are related to the people in Unit 3, so he probably figures the money's going to be affected.
Yeah, he'd create a small revolt, if he moves a certain direction on them. And when all he's getting is you squeaking, he can keep you to a dull roar. If he would have a bigger problem if he cracked down on your neighbor, because the second thing he would do is he would empower you. If he cracked down on your neighbor, then you're going to feel like you got to win, and then you're going to be more dominant. It's always a posturing, a tenant-landlord situation. When the landlord lets the place go, you have control. But then when the landlord comes in and fixes things, you're back in control again. It's always that,
He keeps telling me the tenants have the upper hand. Well, I don't.
Right. Yeah.
Not when.
Yeah, when there's that much stuff on the patio,
Never
that's a
any
breeding
rest.
ground for the bugs, and there's no way they can clean all that. It's a lot of whole pockets in there.
One of the reasons I wanted on the safety commission is because I think when property changes hands and it's a multi-unit, they should be required to check for bugs, and if there are,
fumigate, yeah.
Not just spray, but to actually put a tent over it. That's the only way you're going to get rid of them.
Yeah, keep the fumigation in there for hours. Yeah, no, it's a good point, and you have solutions, and you probably spend time thinking about how it would fix it, how things you come up with would fix the problems. But yet we go on day after day, and we fight, right?
I have to.
You stubborn Pollock?
I have to.
Yeah. So, well.
But there's a family history. My maternal grandparents fled Europe.
Poland.
They fled Poland because of the damn Russians. That the Democrats seem to care about now. Bullshit.
Yeah.
But they fled the bloody, godless communists.
Yep. Whoever you're in bed with,
And, it's in my blood. It's in my blood.
Yeah. Fight and
my
speak your
mother's
mind.
side is Irish.
No, another side that'll speak their mind. That's what I am.
Exactly. I have to.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't help
And
it.
I'm a Christian.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You can't lie with dogs.
Well, you know your rights come from God. They don't come from government.
You can't lie with dogs.
You can't. No, you can't. You're right. They'll bite you in the end. Double meaning there, huh? Bite you in the end.
Yeah.
All right. Well, will you come back on again
Sure,
another time?
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll give it some
And
time.
hopefully I'll be better rested and not so emotional.
Whatever. Be yourself. I always say.
But it gets overwhelming.
I bet it does. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with this. It's not. I actually know somebody at the. I don't know them well, but I'm connected to some of the animal control, and I don't want to get into that where it's like I'm not their boss, so I don't know. I know that they're overwhelmed, they're overloaded and stuff, but you've got a really sticky situation. I think that if you keep breaking it down to who's not doing what, based upon what's serving them, it starts to become clearer what's really at play here. And if you pull out everybody who's looking to save themselves from any grief and even further, hassle, another tenant, you pull everybody out of that, then what you're left with are the facts. That's what you have to work with. Those are your tools that are left, because those are the ones that don't have any emotional ties, any human ties, and I'm not talking about a tank, okay? Don't have a tank roll up and shoot her. I'm kidding. No, it's so you got your own battle with that, but it's not for very much longer, because you're gonna move on, and you'll go on and you'll fight. You're a good spirit. You're a good spirit, and I like that, and I see that in your words that you post, and that draws me to people, is their fighting attitude, not their withdrawal and letting all the stuff without saying something. Say what you feel. Do you want anybody to contact you, or I know your family supports you. They get on there and they click on like and your stuff like that. So share this with them, and
Sure,
they'll hear some of their childhood come up, and the dad mentioned, and your uncle, and everybody will reminisce a little bit through you and your sharing of your experiences of living in California in your 10th year or so. So it's good. We got our Holy Bible right up here. My mom just sent me that from Florida, so I'll keep that around. That's a good thing to have. It creates good energy. I thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And if there's anything I can do for you, always try, get a hold of me if you need something.
Okay.
And we'll kill this off. Until next time, Desert Hot Springs, newsanddhs.com. A new website. What do you think? What do you think of the website?
I like it.
Yeah?
I think it's informative and
Good.
Fast-paced.
Good. I'm not going to go tear anybody
Catchy.
down. Yeah, I'm not going to. It's not going to be about that. It's going to be about sharing information and trying to a nice clean site. So anyway, until next time, newsanddhs.com. And for Henry, we're signing off, and we'll see you in Desert Hot Springs, neighbors.